Macbeth is given more prominence, whereas Banquo plays a very important role in creating a suspenseful action in the play. The second witch salutes him, saying, "Hail, Thane of Cawdor," and the third witch says, "Hail, King of Scotland." So, his future has been told by those three witches. There was an attempt to kill Banquo and Fleance, but Banquo is killed, Fleance escapes. No man born out of a woman in a natural way can kill Macbeth, but witches always tell half the truth. Hello students, I am Anil, Assistant Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Today we are going to discuss Shakespeare's play Macbeth, which is prescribed for the students of 3rd semester BCom, University of Mysuru. Before we move on to Macbeth, let us know about its author, William Shakespeare. You have already known this person, William Shakespeare. He was born in the year 1564 and died in the year 1616 on the same day, April 24th. April 24th is also considered the National English Day. And here, William Shakespeare, he was born in Stratford-upon-Avon and he was a dramatist. He wrote many dramas. They are categorized into three groups: tragedies, comedies, tragic comedies, and one more, that is historical dramas. So here Macbeth is a tragic story of a person, Scottish general Macbeth. William Shakespeare has written 154 sonnets, 37 plus plays, and 2 long narrative poems. People are today researching on William Shakespeare's writings, and there are some other being found. 37 plus 2 more plays have been found recently. We shall move on to Macbeth. To summarize the story of Macbeth, the story goes like this. There are 3 witches that tell the Scottish general Macbeth that he will be the king of Scotland. Encouraged by his wife, Macbeth kills the king. He becomes the new king and he kills more people out of paranoia, out of guilt, out of fear. He starts killing more people because of the guilt he committed. Then civil war erupts to overthrow Macbeth, resulting in more death. And finally, Macbeth is killed. So this is the summary of the play Macbeth. It has 5 acts. It has number of scenes in those acts. You have to understand the story and then you will be able to make a clear picture of Macbeth. There are many characters in the play Macbeth. They are very important. Firstly, 3 witches. These are the characters which are weird in Shakespearean play. They give us a sense of suspense. Then Macbeth, the Scottish general, the protagonist of the story, the protagonist of this play. Lady Macbeth, wife of Macbeth, she plays a very important role in this play. Banquo, Scottish general and friend of Macbeth. Macbeth and Banquo are 2 generals of Scottish army. But Macbeth is given more prominence, whereas Banquo plays a very important role in creating a suspenseful action in the play. King Duncan, he is the king of Scotland. He is the person who trusted Macbeth and Banquo equally and Macbeth a little bit more. But what happens in the play we shall see next. And Macbeth, a nobleman, and he plays a very important role in the end of the play. Lady Macbeth, wife of Macbeth, she has a minor character, but the character is very important in order to prove the characters of Macbeth. Then Malcolm, the son of the king. Donalbain is also another son of the king. Fleance is the son of Banquo. Ross is a nobleman of Scotland, and Lennox is also a nobleman of Scotland. These characters are very important in the play Macbeth. We shall go act-wise. I'll summarize the acts for you, and it would be helpful for you to remember the story and recall the incidents of this play Macbeth. Act 1. Act 1 is very important. In the very beginning of the scene, Macbeth creates a suspense. William Shakespeare creates in this play a suspenseful emotions, and it starts with 3 witches. On a bleak of Scottish moorland, Macbeth and Banquo, 2 of King's generals, discover 3 strange women. They are the witches. They prophesy that Macbeth will be promoted twice to Thane of Cawdor, a rank of aristocracy. Thane means a rank of aristocracy bestowed by grateful kings. and King of Scotland. Banquo's descendants will be kings, but Banquo isn't promised any kingdom himself. The generals want to hear more, but the weird sisters disappear. So these three witches, they meet Banquo and Macbeth. They tell Macbeth that you will be the king of Scotland, and before that you will be promoted to the rank of Thane of Cawdor. In the opening of the scene, we get to know that there is a rebellion going on in Scotland. King Duncan wanted it to put off. Therefore, he sends two of his best men, Macbeth and Banquo. So when they go there, they defeat their enemies. One of the soldiers who come to report what had happened on the battlefield, he tells King that Macbeth fought like a valiant. He was very brave. Though he did not have support of the warfield in the beginning, he later controlled the entire battle and defeated the opponent teams. Many other enemies joined our enemies, so this became very hard for Macbeth to cope up with. So when the situation was not supporting Macbeth, but Macbeth fought like a lion and then he defeated his enemies. This is how a soldier reports the entire thing which happened on the battlefield. Then, after the war, Macbeth and Banquo are on their way to the kingdom. So there, when they were coming back, they meet these three strange women. So these witches, they had met earlier. The opening scene itself is introduced by these three witches. It is a very short scene, first act, first scene. Those three witches, they decide when to meet and they say that we shall meet when the war ends. That war ended the very evening. And in the evening, they meet these two fellows, Macbeth and Banquo. So when they meet, witches tell or greet Macbeth saying that, "Hail, Thane of Glamis." Currently, Macbeth is the Thane of Glamis. He is the administrator of Glamis, one of the regions of Scotland. And the second witch salutes him saying, "Hail, Thane of Cawdor." And the third witch says, "Hail, King of Scotland." So his future has been told by those three witches. And Banquo, for Banquo they say like this, "Banquo, you are also great, but not as great as Macbeth. But you won't have anything in future, but your descendants or your future generation will be kings of Scotland." So when this is said, Macbeth takes it very seriously and Banquo ignores it. And Banquo says, "These witches, these prophecies are like bubbles on earth. They are not permanent. They are momentarily disturbances." Then, soon afterwards, King Duncan names Macbeth Thane of Cawdor. For the surprise of Macbeth, a soldier comes to the battlefield and tells Macbeth that Macbeth is promoted to the rank of Thane of Cawdor as a reward for his success in the recent battles. The promotion seems to support the prophecy. So therefore, Macbeth is really surprised. The king then proposes to make a brief visit that night to Macbeth's castle at Inverness. Inverness is a place where Macbeth lives. Dunsinane is a place where the king lives. So here, king sends an invitation that I am coming to your place. We will have dinner tonight and celebrate this victory. Lady Macbeth receives news from her husband about the prophecy and his new title. She vows to help him become king by whatever means are necessary. This sentence is very strong. Whatever means are necessary. So, this man, Macbeth, after getting the prophecies by those witches, he writes a letter to his beloved, his wife, Lady Macbeth. So, when the letter reaches Lady Macbeth, we can see the intensity of emotions in Lady Macbeth when compared to that of Macbeth. She decides that, okay, if one of the prophecies have been fulfilled, then the other two should be fulfilled. Therefore, I will do whatever it takes in order to make my husband the king of Scotland. Then we shall move on to the second act. In the second act, Macbeth returns to his castle, followed almost immediately by King Duncan. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, they plot together to kill King Duncan and wait until everyone is asleep. At the appointed time, Lady Macbeth gives the guards drugged wine so Macbeth can enter and kill the king. He regrets this almost immediately, but his wife reassures him. So what happens in Act 2? Act 2 is the climax of the story where a twist is introduced. Macbeth, though he expressed his willingness and ambition to become the king of Scotland, he did not dare to do so. He wanted to enjoy the popularity of his current situation. He won a war for Scotland, and people are looking at high esteem towards Macbeth. Macbeth did not want to lose this opportunity and he wanted to enjoy the present. But what happened? Lady Macbeth, she invokes his ambition again and again. She tells him, "Were you drunk when you decided to become the King of Scotland?" Then she persuades him to fulfill the idea. She persuades him to fulfill the dream. Then their plan is like this. So the King Duncan has already said that he would reach their home in the evening. They would have dinner at their place. Therefore, Lady Macbeth plans that, okay, when everybody sleeps, I will dope the drinks of King's guards. When the guards are down, you go and kill King Duncan. When Macbeth hesitates to do so, she takes the opportunity to go inside the sleeping chamber of King Duncan and he tries to kill King Duncan. But she comes back without doing so. She tells an emotional dialogue. She says, "If King Duncan did not look like my father, then I would have only done this job." That is the intensity of Lady Macbeth's ambition. Where Macbeth hesitated to do so, Lady Macbeth is completely on her idea. She wanted to do it then and there. Then they wanted to blame the gods for the murder of King Duncan. She leaves the bloody daggers by the dead king just before Macduff, a nobleman, arrives. When Macduff discovers the murder, Macbeth kills the drunken guards in a show of rage and retribution. Duncan's sons, Malcolm and Donalbain, they flee, fearing for their own lives, but they are nevertheless blamed for the murder. So this is what happens that night. King Duncan comes to the place of Macbeth. Everything is set for their arrival, and they are happy to be the host for the king. King Duncan has completely trusted his men, Macbeth and Banquo alike. But Lady Macbeth becomes like poison in Macbeth's consciousness. So here, the plan goes like this. When everybody sleeps, Lady Macbeth will take down the guards by doping their drink, and Macbeth should go inside and kill King Duncan. When Macbeth wanted to kill King Duncan, he could not do so, but persuaded by his wife, he does. And this scene is not shown on stage. A screaming is shown off stage, and Macbeth appears with a bloody dagger in his hand. And then Lady Macbeth takes this dagger, she gets into the chamber. Again, she smears the blood of King Duncan on the faces of the guards, and they portray that guards have killed King Duncan. Moving on to the next Act 3, we see Macbeth becomes King of Scotland, but is plagued by feelings of insecurity. So his guilt starts overpowering the ambitions of Macbeth. He remembers the prophecy that Banquo's descendants will inherit the throne and arranges for Banquo's and his son Fleance's killing. In the darkness, Banquo is murdered, but his son escapes the assassins. In the third act, we see Macbeth and Lady Macbeth dressed like King and Queen of Scotland. But Macbeth knows that Banquo was present when the witches prophesied. In the third act, in the beginning, we find Banquo expressing his doubts over the issues. He thinks Macbeth might have committed this murder, but he is trying to blame the king's sons. Now he becomes the king, but insecurity, guilt starts overpowering Macbeth. Now he wants to kill Banquo. Why? Because Banquo knows the truth. He may guess what might have happened because the witches had already poisoned Banquo's mind as well. But Banquo resisted. Macbeth did not. Therefore, he wanted to kill Banquo and his son. He thinks those witches which promised me the title of Thane of Cawdor, King of Scotland, they have also promised Banquo that he will not be the king, but his descendants will have the title of Scotland's kingship. Therefore, he wanted to kill Banquo and his son Fleance. There was an attempt to kill Banquo and Fleance, but Banquo is killed, Fleance escapes. At this state, Macbeth had arranged a banquet on the same day at 7 o'clock in the evening. He had invited all noblemen, all trusted people to his banquet, but Banquo is missing. So at his state banquet that night, Macbeth sees the ghost of Banquo and worries the courtiers with his mad response. Lady Macbeth dismisses the court and unsuccessfully tries to calm her husband. What happens? The party begins in the evening, a state banquet, where Macbeth is talking to everybody. He is talking to all the noblemen, and he had also set murderers to kill Banquo and Fleance. And those murderers were successful in killing only Banquo, but they could not kill Fleance. So one of the murderers gets back to Macbeth and tells him that Banquo is no more, but Fleance escaped. So this creates more imbalance in the mind of Macbeth. So when he wanted to go and sit on an empty chair talking to his guests that night, he saw the ghost of Banquo, and Macbeth starts losing his balance, mental balance. Then everybody is worried looking at Macbeth's state. But Lady Macbeth, she knew everything, but she was not informed about the killing of Banquo. She did not know what happened to Macbeth. Therefore, she tried to calm Macbeth down and bring the situation under control. But the ghost appears second time on the scene, and then Macbeth really loses his nerve. He could not act properly. Therefore, Lady Macbeth dismisses the party. So this is very important when guilts start overpowering Macbeth. In the fourth act, Macbeth seeks out the witches who say that he will be safe until a local wood, Burnham Wood, marches into battle against him. He also need not fear anyone born of woman. But that sounds secure, no loopholes here. They also prophesy that the Scottish succession will still come from Banquo's son. Macbeth embarks on a reign of terror, slaughtering many, including Macduff's family. Macduff had gone to seek Malcolm, one of the sons of Duncan, at the court of English king. Malcolm is young and unsure of himself, but Macduff, pained with grief, persuades him to lead an army against Macbeth. So in the fourth act, we come to see that Macbeth's guilt are overpowering him and he is losing his balance. A fear is in Macbeth. He wanted some advice from the witches. He goes back to them looking for their prophecy. So those three prophecies were fulfilled. He became the Thane of Cawdor. He became the King of Scotland. And what next? So he wanted to know what is there in his future. So he meets those three witches, but those three witches tell him, you need not worry until the Burnham Wood moves to your castle, or no man born out of woman can kill you. So you need not worry. You can stay happy. You can do whatever you want. That is what the witches told Macbeth. And Macbeth is now feeling free. And he is feeling safe. So those were the promises. And when he saw people, when he had doubts about the noblemen, when he recognized or when he found out some people are acting very suspiciously, he finds out Macduff missing from Scotland's state of affairs. So he finds that he had gone to meet one of the king's sons. So he kills the family of Macduff. Macduff's wife, children are killed. Therefore, this creates a new turn in the story. He embarks on a reign of terror, slaughtering many, including Macduff's family. Macduff had gone to seek Malcolm at the court of English king. Malcolm is young, unsure of himself, but Macduff, pained with grief, persuades him to lead an army against Macbeth. So the news of killing Macduff's family reaches Macduff. Macbeth is committing crimes one after other. He is killing people one after the other. Things are going haphazardly. So he wanted to bring everything under control, but he could not because of the guilt. Here we can see the moral flaw in Macbeth. He was a very good person in the beginning, but what happens after this ambition gets uncontrolled? Macbeth acts as a madman. He starts a reign of terror. He slaughters all the men whom he finds very suspicious. Moving on to the last act, the fifth act. Macbeth feels safe in his castle, but he had taken suggestions from the witches. They have told Macbeth that he won't be harmed by any man who is born out of woman, and he is not harmed until the forest of Burnham moves to his castle. So in fifth act, Macbeth feels safe in his remote castle at Dunsinane until he is told that Burnham Wood is moving towards him. So what happens? Macbeth feels safe after thinking that forest cannot move and every man is born out of woman. So this makes Macbeth feel that he is safe. But a soldier comes and tells Macbeth that The forest is moving to Dunsinane. How? The army is arranged by Macduff, Malcolm, and Donalbain. They are trying to attack Macbeth. They take the branches of Burnham Wood and hide themselves, and they keep coming towards the place of Macbeth. So he feels unsafe when he sees Burnham Wood is really moving towards his castle. Malcolm's army is carrying branches from the forest as camouflage for their assault on Macbeth's stronghold. Meanwhile, an overwrought and conscience ridden Lady Macbeth walks in her sleep and tells her secrets to her doctor. She commits suicide. As the final battle commences, Macbeth hears of Lady Macbeth's suicide and mounts. Lady Macbeth has been a strong force behind Macbeth. But what happens? Even Lady Macbeth starts feeling the guilt. She became the reason for the destruction of Macbeth. Macbeth was a very famous personality in the beginning of the play, and his moral flaws bring him down in his popularity. Therefore, what he does, and what is happening in the state affects Lady Macbeth's psychological health. So she becomes upset. She starts walking in her sleep and she starts speaking in her sleep, but she is not aware of what she is doing. She becomes ill, and Macbeth arranges for a doctor and a keeper for herself. But she reveals all the secrets. At night, she holds the candle, she walks on the aisles of her room, and then she goes to a basin. She acts as if she is washing her hands. She tells a famous quote: all the perfumes of Arabia cannot sweeten these little hands, which imply the crime she has made Macbeth do it. Then she commits suicide in the end. This affects Macbeth for a greater deal, and Macbeth hears of Lady Macbeth's suicide and mounts. Finally, what happens? In the midst of a losing battle, Macduff challenges Macbeth. Macbeth learns Macduff is the child of a Caesarean birth. Here is what the twist given by the witches. No man born out of a woman in a natural way can kill Macbeth. But witches always tell half the truth. Therefore, here is this man Macduff, who was grieved by the death of his family or the murder of his family, wife and child or children. So he realizes he is doomed. Macbeth realizes that he is doomed. Now all the prophecies are being fulfilled. Burnham Wood started moving from its place, and here is a man, Macduff, who is born not in a natural way and submits to his enemy. Macduff triumphs and brings the head of the traitor Macbeth to Malcolm. Malcolm declares peace and goes to Scone to be crowned king. So, what happens? Finally, Macduff challenges Macbeth. Macbeth, though sure of his failure or though sure of his defeat, he fights as a valiant soldier and dies. He is beheaded by Macduff and he brings the head onto the stage. And that is where we come to know the poetic justice done. If we do wrong things, there are results which correct us. Let us see what are the themes related to this play, Macbeth. Themes related to Macbeth is the corrupting power of unchecked ambition. Macbeth had this ambition to become king, but it is not expressed. But they are expressed and fueled by the three witches. When they told him that he would be the Thane of Cawdor, he immediately becomes the Thane of Cawdor. And then he is promised the kingship of Scotland. And to achieve that, Macbeth did not wait. He acted immediately, giving in to his desires. His wife, Lady Macbeth, she encourages him to do crimes to become the king, to fulfill their desires very immediately. So his corrupting ambition or corrupting power of unchecked ambition ruins Macbeth. That is where his moral flaws are highlighted and he falls from the greater heights to his destruction. So here, coming to the second one, the relationship between cruelty and masculinity. Macbeth is a very decent person, a trusted one by King Duncan. But what happens to his all bravery that he displayed in the battle when he won wars for King Duncan? Then it turns into cruelty. So when he becomes king through wrongful means, all he does was very cruel things. He kills more and more people, starting with Banquo. When he killed King Duncan, he had doubt on Banquo. Therefore, he arranges murder of Banquo. And then Banquo is killed. Then Macduff's wife and children are killed. So Macbeth goes on doing this reign of terror. He goes on killing people. And here is a relationship between a man who is very brave and his cruelty in his nature. Then difference between kingship and tyranny. King Duncan was a famous king. All people loved and respected him. Even Macbeth did it. But after he was given this taste of desire, when he gives in to his desires, what he does not become a good king, but he becomes a tyrant. Macbeth, in order to save his position, he does all necessary things, all bad things, killing his own men, trying to retain his power, not to make or not to fulfill the prophecies of the witches, which told after Macbeth, Banquo's descendants would be the kings. Then ambition plays a very important role here. Ambition of Macbeth is fueled by the witches, and his ambition, when known by Lady Macbeth, it is fueled even more. Then he wanted to become the king immediately overnight. So when we observe the first act, everything takes place very quickly. The first scene starts with the day of the war, and the very night, King Duncan is killed. And the very next day, we find Macbeth becoming the king of Scotland. So ambition is very important. And guilt is another important theme in this play, Macbeth, where after killing King Duncan, Macbeth feels guilt. He feels that he had done a very bad deed. So he started feeling all these things. After killing Banquo also, he feels the same. He sees the ghost of Banquo in a filled hall. Only he could see the ghost, but nobody else identifies. Therefore, we find the moral flaw in Macbeth, and it leads to his guilt, a feeling of guilt. So these are the important themes of the play Macbeth. In the next video, we are going to see the characters in deep and also the important dialogues related to the play Macbeth. We shall meet in the next class. Thank you.